Hi everyone, my name is Alyssa Shack. I'm a registered nurse and a certified pediatric nurse. I'm pursuing my master's in nursing education, and this video series is part of my project towards my degree. This is the first video of my video series. It's called Put Your Breast Foot Forward. And this video series is for new and expectant moms and their partners and support people who may be family, friends, neighbors, anyone involved in that little baby's life. So moms, if you're watching this alone, please go grab your partner or support people and have them watch this with you, or you can send them the link as well. So the purpose of this video series is to educate moms and their support people about breastfeeding and to provide a foundation to help you all have a successful breastfeeding experience. Because COVID has affected many in-person breastfeeding classes, I really wanted to put this video together. Also of note, I'm a new mom myself, and I had my baby boy back in April of 2020. So I totally understand the difficulties of having a new baby and breastfeeding and having a new baby and breastfeeding the baby during a pandemic. So I'm right there with you. So in this video, I'm going to discuss a few different things. It's supposed to be an introductory video. I'm going to talk about recommendations for breastfeeding, the benefits for baby and for mom, the anatomy of the breast, and ways that partners and support people can get involved and why they're so important too. So let's begin by discussing recommendations for breastfeeding. The AAP, which is the American Academy of Pediatrics, you may hear me mention the AAP several times in this video series. They recommend breastfeeding for 6 months exclusively, and then after you introduce solid foods to continue until the baby's a year old. So basically, breastfeeding for a year. This is for many reasons, but mostly because of the many benefits that breastfeeding has for both mother and baby. I'd also like to note that some people used to believe, and some people still do believe, that formula is superior to breast milk and that formula is more nutritious. This is just false. Breast milk is perfectly tailored to your baby and it's the perfect source of nutrition. This myth came into being because formula companies were trying to market their formula, and that's what they told people several generations ago. But this myth still floats around, and so I wanted to address that. So let's talk about what is even in breast milk. So why is breast milk so great? There are thousands of ingredients in breast milk. Researchers don't even know everything that's in breast milk. Many of these ingredients can't be replicated in formula. This video series is not about knocking people who formula feed or formula. Formula is a great option for, a lot of people, and some babies medically need formula. So, formula has its place in society. But you really just can't deny the fact that breast milk has a lot of ingredients that simply can't be manufactured and put into formula. So what is even in breast milk? Let's see. We've got 130 prebiotics. Prebiotics are complex sugars that help protect baby's gut. And then there's also a bunch of proteins. I have here 415 proteins. Whey is a type of protein, and whey is something that's in any kind of milk, cow's milk, breast milk, but the amount of whey in breast milk is higher than in formula, and that's why breast milk is easier to digest for babies. And there's other proteins in breast milk that are protective against infection, something called antibodies, which we've been hearing a lot about because of COVID. Antibodies help, obviously, protect against infection, and there's a lot of antibodies in breast milk. Breast milk also contains fats, which help brain development and the baby grow and provides a lot of calories. There's vitamins, and there's leukocytes, which are white blood cells, and their purpose is to also help fight infection. And then there's also carbohydrates, which provide calories in the breast milk. And beyond these things, there's even more things in breast milk. So it's really pretty amazing. Breast milk is beneficial for babies, and breastfeeding lowers the risk for babies and for a lot of things. There's a 72% reduction in risk for hospitalization for respiratory infections in the first year. Breastfeeding also reduces the rate of ear infections by 23%. And breastfeeding reduces the risk of SIDS, which is sudden infant death syndrome, by 36%. Also of note, once baby grows up and becomes a child and adult, breastfeeding lowers the rates of obesity and diabetes in breastfed babies who grow up and become adults. Breastfeeding is also beneficial for moms. We talk a lot about how important it is for babies, but it's beneficial for mothers too. It can lower the rate of postpartum depression. It lowers rates for breast and ovarian cancer, and it decreases postpartum blood loss because it helps the uterus contract after labor. So basically, your baby lives in your uterus. This is your uterus. Your baby lives in your uterus for 9 months. And then once you give birth to baby, your uterus is expanded and it needs to contract. It needs to start getting back down to its usual size, which I believe is about the size of your fist. So, and during that time, if your uterus doesn't contract well, you can lose a lot of blood. So nursing your baby causes the release of something called oxytocin, which causes your uterus to contract. And that's why breastfeeding is so great right after birth, because it can help with that, help lower that blood loss. Also of note, breastfeeding can cause easier weight loss in the postpartum period. This might not be true for some women. But for some women, they do notice that they lose weight a lot easier. And it makes sense because breastfeeding, you're burning 300 to 500 calories a day breastfeeding your baby, depending on their age and how much they're taking, of course. But it's about 300 to 500 calories a day. And so you're burning those calories. And so it makes sense that you would lose weight a little faster. Breastfeeding is also financially beneficial. According to the Office of the Surgeon General, families who follow optimal breastfeeding practices, which means breastfeeding for that first year alone, they can save between $1,200 and $1,500 a year on infant formula. Formula is expensive. In addition, a study that was published in the Journal of Pediatrics reported that if 90% of U.S. families breastfed exclusively for 6 months, the U.S. would save about $13 billion per year in medical and other costs. So it's big from a society standpoint, too. In addition, breastfeeding is beneficial for employers, and we're going to talk about going back to work in a future video, but this is a good little fact to have on hand. Breastfeeding is beneficial for employers because if infants are getting sick less, then there's fewer health insurance claims, less employee time off to care for their sick kids, and higher productivity. You're not getting those, texts and calls from daycare saying, oh no, your baby's sick again, come pick them up. That's happening less, at least, when you breastfeed. So now we're going to talk about what actually happens during breastfeeding. How does breastfeeding work? And to do that, we want to talk about the anatomy of the breast. Knowing the anatomy of the breast is also really helpful to understand other breastfeeding concepts we're going to discuss in later videos. So I have some drawings here. Let's make this a little bigger. So this is the lactating breast. There's a lot of things in this diagram, but what we're going to look at specifically is the nipple, the areola, the glandular tissue, and the milk ducts. So the first thing I've, boxed in here are the nipple and areola. This is what you see from the outside. You're probably familiar with what your nipple looks like. The nipple part is usually raised. Some women have flatter nipples, but generally the nipple is the actual raised part. It is at the tip of your breast there. And the areola is the large dark circle around the nipple. So if you think of the areola as the target, the nipple is the bullseye. And this contrast in color, your nipple and areola are dark so that it attracts babies. Babies who are newborn babies don't have great eyesight, so they can find where the food is coming from. The next thing we're going to talk about is glandular tissue. So again, I've kind of put a little box around that on the diagram. Glandular tissue is secretory tissue that makes and stores milk. So this is what's creating the milk, and it does store a little bit of milk, but this is the milk factory here. And now we want to talk about milk ducts. So there's main milk ducts and secondary milk ducts. The main milk ducts the milk ducts in general are transportation. They can store a little itty bit of milk, but mostly they're there to transport the milk. And as you can see, the secondary milk ducts are smaller, and the main milk ducts are what leads out of your nipple into your baby's mouth. And that transports the milk from the glandular tissue. So we do a lot of talk about successful breastfeeding, but what really makes breastfeeding successful? I would just say that it varies based on the baby and the mom. There really is no true definition of success. Obviously, we know what the recommendations are to breastfeed your baby for a year, but that might not be everyone's goal. So I would encourage you to think about your goal for breastfeeding. Is it 6 months? Is it a year? Maybe you're going to start smaller. Some women do start smaller, and that seems more achievable for them. They might say, I'm going to breastfeed for 2 months or 3 months. And then when it's time to go back to work, if we're really in a good groove, then I'm going to continue. But that's something that you should think about. And you very well may surpass your goal. I've heard of a lot of women who said 2 months, and then they go to 4 months and 6, and then they're still breastfeeding past a year. So it's kind of up to you, and ultimately, I think success is having a happy and healthy baby and a happy and healthy mom. There's can be a lot of shame, and you might feel like a failure if you don't breastfeed for that whole year, or if you encounter troubles and you decide to end your breastfeeding sooner than you thought. And ultimately, as moms, we have enough to feel guilty about. So, if you have a happy and healthy baby, that is number one. That's priority. And if you can achieve that, then you should be proud of yourself. And, I think that is the top priority. So let's look ahead to future videos. The topics include, in video 2, we're going to have the first 2 weeks and getting a good latch. This is going to be a longer video. It's got a lot of really good content. Video 3 is about milk supply and comfort while breastfeeding, so that will include breastfeeding positions and just kind of the mechanics of holding your baby while you feed. Video 4 is going to be about pumping and going back to work, because a lot of times for women, those two coincide. So those will be discussed. And then the last video, video 5, is about common breastfeeding issues that moms face. This video isn't to scare you away, but to prepare you in case an issue arises and for you to troubleshoot what's going on and kind of be prepared. Also, in addition, in each video, I will discuss ways partners and other support people can be supportive and get involved in breastfeeding. I just want everyone to keep in mind that these videos are important not only for moms to watch, but for partners and support people to watch too. The information provided is important for everyone because it affects the new baby that's going to be part of your family. Partner and family support is vital to successful breastfeeding journey. Studies show that moms who do not have support while breastfeeding tend to end their breastfeeding experiences sooner than moms who feel supported. So I really encourage you to sit down and have a conversation about how long you want to breastfeed for, what your initial goal is, and get together and watch the rest of the video series. So join me for video 2, the first 2 weeks and getting a good latch, which will be coming up next. Also of note, as part of my project, I do have a link here to a survey. I need to collect some data about you watching your video and what you think about it. No identifying information is going to be asked for or stored. Please fill that out. I would really appreciate it. And I'll see you in video 2.